the invite was to everybody who's been on this thing. So
that's awesome.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everybody. This is Recruiting EQ, episode number 43. First of two, the two-parter holiday year-end drop-in. So thank you so much for everyone who is joining us now. Before I go around and say this to everybody, I just want to show off my Christmas sweater. I have my Christmas sweater.
Yay, well done. I think you're showing up in the Christmas sweater. Excellent.
For everybody. Anybody, happy holidays. Anybody who's going to join next week, you have your assignment of the Christmas sweater. Okay. Before we get into it, then let's go around the room. If everybody could maybe introduce yourself, a little bit about what you do. Starting with Ardit. You were here first. You should go first.
Thanks, Rick. Hi, everyone. Ardit here. Let's see. 12 years in recruitment, started in information systems, then worked strictly on retained executive search. My last role, I took a combination of everything that I've done hands-on and learned, and was focused on learning and development on more of the contingent and on the retained side. And excited to be here and excited to hear from everybody.
Excellent. Hi, I'm Hector Quintana-Smith. I'm currently district manager with Creative Outdoor, and I come from a background of about 10 plus years of staffing, working for agencies like Robert Half and Ronstad, and about 8 years of advertising, PR. I have a funny story to tell you later, Rick, about I actually had the Michael Myers mask in my hands at one point. It's fun. And so I've been working in the industry or been business development since I was 12. So I know I'm a lot younger than I look. No, I'm kidding. But I just so I have lots of fun stories and experience in this particular area.
Cool. Thanks, Hector. Who would like to go next?
I'll go. I'm not sure how you're going here, but anyway, my screen is, I'm below Hector, so I'll just chat. I'm feeling very outnumbered here, so any ladies want to show up that have been on this? I'm feeling person out. Anyhow, so
they were invited. It wasn't just guys and you. I swear to God.
Next week or something. Who knows? I don't know. Or maybe they're just being fashionably late. But I'm Julie, so I run Raymond George Consultancy. Prior to Raymond George, I have been in the staffing business for, I'm going to do the same thing as you, Hector, a very long time. Have started as a temps controller many, many moons ago, and have got every T-shirt, I think, in the sort of layers and the structures of staffing agencies, up to sort of regional director, worked in 3 different countries and 2 different continents, and managed big teams. Most recently, when I was employed, let's call it, at a creative marketing agency, which is partly why I love Hector so much, because we share some of the same roots. But anyway, that's my story. Moving on to Dominic.
Thanks, Julie. I'm Dominic Maiani, president of Lazio Search Group. What we do is executive search, sales, professional services in the supply chain and logistics space, and our bread and butter is SaaS supply chain tech. But I did start off in staffing 14, 15 years ago, so know that space as well. And I think we're getting back into it in 2025. I'll go to Rick.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rick Cristiano. I am the Director of Recruiting Sales at Empower Professionals currently. Came up in the technical recruiting space like many other staffing professionals. Since then, I've branched out in the different industries just based on the nature of different clients pulling you in different directions and the need for different types of positions to be filled. Done everything from full desk through sales. More recently, leading sales teams, building out sales divisions, so sales professionals, whether that be business development managers or lead generation. A lot of what I do is mostly national basis, but we do some international work as well. I have experience in the European markets, South American markets, and also the Asian markets. So not to spread the jelly too thin across the toast, but I've touched a lot of things in my career, everything from the perm to the temp and both national and international. So Been a good ride so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing what 2025 brings us.
I guess I can go next. So my name's Ian.
Sure.
I've been in the recruitment industry for 17 years now, I think, predominantly in the finance and accounting space and now in the tech space for the last 5-6 years. And currently the president of Greenlight Tech Staffing, which is a division of Greenlight Consulting, robotics process automation consulting firm. So definitely an interesting environment to be in, with the consulting side on as one part of the business and then tech staffing on the other side. I've led big teams, small teams. Previously was with Randstad. Had my own recruitment firm for 6.5 years in the finance and accounting space. And I guess I'm in Calgary, if that's important to anybody.
Canada. Yes, thank you, Ian.
Yes,
Yeah.
Canada. I want to move to Canada.
There's a lot of snow right now in Calgary, so I don't know if you want.
I'll take the snow. I'll take the snow. And I live in Los Angeles. That's how much I want to get out of here. I'm just kidding.
Rob?
Let's switch.
Like
Rob?
most of you, am I audible?
Yes.
I am an
Yep.
old warhorse from recruiting and got my start with Randstad as well. And through Randstad, got exposed to leading offshore teams, and that's when I felt that I had a better plan of how to get performance from offshore recruiting. And so I decided to open my own firm in India. And since doing that, we used Zoho software quite extensively in our company to scale. And we recently became a Zoho partner here in Canada and the US because we were using it so extensively. We invested in another company that was already a Zoho partner. And so now I find myself offering, helpful solutions that I ultimately created for my own purposes. But we end up working with lots of different customers in Canada and the US, supplying either Zoho or recruiting in India. Elite recruiting, I should add. In India, it's that would be our distinction in just the way we approach the business model. We really focus on the producers, and we have our own methods of getting at them. So that's pretty much it for me. And looking forward to 2025. It's the end of 2024 has
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
A nice pickup.
Yes.
It has. I think we've all seen that. So before we dive in, I thank you all for being here. But before we dive in, first of all of you have been a guest on this weekly event in the past. So thank you for that. It's been sort of an experiment for us. This is the first year we've been doing it. We've only really been on video since the summer. And it seems to have been resonating with people. And that's largely because of you guys. So thank you very much for your participation, your topic choices, and sort of sharing with me, and of course with everybody in our respective networks, kind of, a little bit about what it's been like. For some people, just to give you some of the feedback that we've gotten on these events, it's been kind of a lifeline. Like for new business owners, it's been very helpful for them to sort of get a sense of what other people are struggling with. And so again, I thank you. And I think a lot of people do out there. Before we dive into fully the comments thing, I will say once again, please do comment, ask questions. We have got great participation on a lot of these episodes. This is going out live right now to YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So whichever platform you're on, we are not on that platform. So you cannot just message us on another platform and expect us to answer. Please do comment on this thread. We will see your comment. It may get cut off if it's very long, FYI. But we'll happily address your comments when there's a lull in the conversation. We will not name you in the interest of privacy because we don't want to get you in trouble, since you might be at work right now. And it is being recorded. So there you go. Disclaimer done. I have 2 questions I would like to ask everybody. I threw them in at the very last minute online, so I don't know if you had a chance to see them. But I think it'd be good to go around the room, question 1 and question 2. Pretty straightforward stuff, but to me, these have been the hot topics of of the year, and hopefully you let me know if I'm nuts. But number one, technology, tech stack, tools. I think it'd be great to go around the room even and just get a sense of, what are you using? Like what's hot, what's not? Is there something you stopped using maybe this year that you're like, this is useless? Where do what do you want to use for next year? So just sort of briefly, if we can all go around the room and go like tech stack wise, this is what we use, this is what we like. These are maybe things that we stopped using because they weren't any good, and this is kind of where we want to go.
Rick, can I just ask?
And let's do the same order, I guess. Let's start with you, Ardit, and see how you're feeling about tech stack.
Rick, can I just say Shannon's trying to get in?
Yeah,
just
of course.
I think she's backstage.
Is she? Oh,
Yes. Okay.
She's warming up
there's a whole other
backstage.
section to this software that I didn't know existed.
Coming to help
Thanks,
me.
guys.
There she is. Perfect. Oh look.
Oh,
There's
here
more
comes the
backstage.
rescue team.
Hey guys,
Thank you.
amazing! I didn't think there's more backstage.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
It was looking really sausage.
Thanks for joining us.
So you
Can
needed
you
more
guys
women,
both,
honestly.
introduce
Right, Shannon?
yourselves and yeah,
Got a bit of a delay here too, so I think
100%.
we'll have to be careful. Yeah.
Okay.
Back to you, Rick.
touche. Shannon and Marcia, thanks for joining us. And if you could please introduce yourselves and a bit about what you do before we dive in.
Sure. Go ahead, Shannon. Sure. I'm going to hand it over to somebody else. Okay, there we go. Thanks, Marcia. I'm Shannon Roach, and I do executive search, talent advisory, and tech recruitment with Recruition Talent Services. I founded that firm about 6 years ago, and we've been riding the wave since I started. I've had 2 kids in that time, and a pandemic, the subsequent tech apocalypse, and now things are finally starting to show the green shoots of hope. So very much looking forward to, to 2025. Like a lot of folks, I got my start elsewhere working for other agencies. I've done the tours through Ian Martin Group, Keith Begg, and then ISG Search before coming out and doing things on my own. And that's kind of Shannon in a nutshell. Marcia, over to you.
Hi guys, I'm Marcia King. I'm the Director of Business Development for a healthcare staffing firm based out of San Antonio, Texas. I've been in the healthcare staffing game for 20 plus-ish years now. Let's not, who's counting? It's been, a very interesting couple of years because we are a new division of an existing organization. They are primarily focused and have been focused on government services for all these years. So what we did is we brought in the private sector. So the good news is for 2023 and 24, I've been able to continue to add new business for us, primarily because we are a diversity certified organization. I think that is such a feather in our cap, and we're really proud of that. And a lot of organizations are really looking to diversify their spend right now. So I'm excited to be part of the conversation today. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much, Marcia. Apparently, I'm on a long delay, possibly because I'm hosting this. So I'm going to speak extra fast, ? I don't know what to do. But what I will do is go back to what we were saying before, which is there are 2 questions that we had planned to ask you guys. And there's already some comments with a third. So I'll throw it out there anyway. But first one, I thought we could go around the room and just briefly talk, each of us, about technology, tech stack. Like what are we seeing? What are we using? What did we stop using, maybe? What do we want to use? Just briefly what we think is useful and not useful going into 2025. Ardit, do you want to kick it off as we were before and keep the order?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rick. Hi, everyone. For those of you that I haven't met before, it's a pleasure. For those of you that I've seen before, hello again. I've had an interesting year in recruitment. I think the last 2 quarters of 2024 have been interesting for recruitment as a whole. I had a unique opportunity to work closely with clients from a more personal level and looking at their systems and what they're using. I think my background in information systems really came into play in regards to AI and how they're integrating it into what they already have, such as their current ATS and CRMs. And one of the things that I found quite interesting is automating recruitment. And I know it's a pretty broad subject, but even things such as sourcing talent, filtering through talent, and picking up on certain keywords. I had one case where after carefully auditing with one of their AI tools that they were using, they actually missed on quite a bit of talent that they automatically just parsed out because it didn't pick up on certain keywords that they put into this AI tool. So I think it's safe to say, the human-to-human interaction is still the A1, the go-to, as we give that extra pair of eyes. And a common theme that I've seen is AI is good. It can even be great, but I think it's not where it needs to be in terms of really capturing the talent pool for what it is and the true market for it. Another tool that I've seen, I guess, used not as much anymore has been the marketing campaigns and the mass outreach because of the feedback that clients have given in terms of, hey, like, we're getting bombarded here. Everybody's reaching out to us all day, every day. Give us a chance to respond. And I think a lot of recruitment firms have really taken that feedback quite well and understood that it's a quality over quantity. And we're all human beings and we all have other responsibilities, including our hiring managers. So giving them that extra space and allowing them to respond is crucial.
I think that's great. All right. So I think you said we're keeping the same order that we were before.
Thanks, Rick. Hector, what do you think about tech stack?
Okay, great. Julie's like, yeah. So, well, it's funny because when I was on the same panel as Ardit a few months ago, and we talked about the AI aspect. I mean, I think you can't talk about business without talking about artificial intelligence. I mean, I just read an article about how people are. It's gonna permeate into every aspect of business, including marketing and staffing. But the interesting thing is that it's also the different types of AI that are being developed and the types of AI that you use. Because I heard somebody say, that, or Ardit, you just said it about using it and how it left out a lot of people because they didn't use the proper keywords. So what I think people aren't talking about as much is technology is only as good as the people that put the information into the technology, right? So I think the bigger question is, how are you going to train your employees to utilize AI in the appropriate way that makes sense for whatever it is that you're doing for your business, period, and then also for whatever facet of the business that you're using it for. So I love ChatGPT. I've already, it's funny. I was watching. Jack Whitehall is one of my favorite comedians, and he does this thing with his dad. And there was a segment where they talked about there was a AI, and his dad is very, very old school, and he fell in love with the AI robot and was having dinner with the AI robot afterwards. It was hysterical. But I was one of those people that did not want to cross over to the dark side. I was like AI, no, I didn't want to do it. But now ChatGPT and I are best friends, and it's I think, and the reason I bring that up is because there's AI that gets to understand and learn and know who you are, so it makes it easier when you continue to use that AI. Its memory is being updated so that it learns and learns and learns more, right? But if you're just if you're on LinkedIn, you can see that there's an option to rewrite with AI, right? And that kind of thing is a little bit more, for me, hesitant because that's not really learning who I am, or no, it wouldn't speak in my voice. And so, but at the end of the day, and I'll end with this, we still have to, edit and proof and make sure that when you're utilizing the tool, again, that you're entering the information and it's just garbage in, garbage out, right? So you have to make sure that we're training the people how to use that. I think so. Anyway, that's my 2 cents for now.
Hector, if I may, I think you're definitely spot on, but there's also certain, let's call them keywords for the sake of argument here, but skill sets really, that sometimes a candidate may not put on their profile or may not know to put on their profile, even though they not only have it, but probably use it in their day-to-day, and it's what made them successful. And I think we're also eliminating those those candidates as well, where it's not necessarily a training issue. It's more of a, hey, we're recruiters. We find this information out and show you what market's asking.
Yeah.
If I could contribute something to that exact same thought, and that is that at the end of the day, things like tech skills, the hard skills, those are the things we ask for in a job description. That's the entry point into a process.
Right.
And when AI generates them, they're looking for all of those things that are keyword searchable. And yet the reason why we hire people is because of the soft skills. And you can't really search those because there is no universal creativity index or, measure of somebody's vision. So what we need is to actually still have those conversations. And where it gets really challenging, it's the data issue that is recruitment, is that it's all candidate controlled. And so words like, creativity and things like that, they're practically ubiquitous. They are on every single resume, whether you're a software developer or a carpenter. You're going to see words like creative on somebody's resume. So AI is going to be a limiting factor there until we can start having it take those contextual inferences from, I led this project, which involved, I don't know, an outside of the box sort of thinking type solution to whatever that project was. And even then it's going to see, like, everybody's got examples where something was potentially creative. So it's not going to be, it's never going to sort of replace us entirely when it comes to leveraging those tools. Where it is incredibly helpful is as it gets smarter and it does understand, one, even just like the many different titles that a person can have, but then also draw inferences from things like, and especially if it's got real live access to, like, the intranet. So if I need somebody who's coming from a startup environment, say post Series B, they've kind of been through a funding round, they understand that, and they can take from the context of somebody's resume and the information that's available in that resume, kind of do the background scan and say, yeah, that is in fact a post Series B company. And, they held kind of the appropriate title, and then rank them higher because that would be sort of closer to the money for what we're looking for. When AI can do that, and that is sort of data points that are available, that is something that then we will start having fewer, better conversations, I think. And so that'll be when AI can really step in on the sourcing front. But it will never, ever, ever replace that sort of human quantifiability of, is somebody likable? Is somebody, is somebody creative? And it's always like a beauty's in the eye of the beholder situation. So I think it has its place. And I think people that aren't, like, that are dead set against it, I think they're really missing an opportunity and doing a lot of legwork they don't need to. But I also think that, using it appropriately and then kind of bucketing the functions that can be sort of automated and the things that need to be preserved as human, that's going to be really key. That'll be the discernment factor that brings us all and elevates all of us across the board into a tough position.
Yeah. Especially in the recruitment area, in HR, in that area, that's a little bit more. I mean, I read an article in Forbes. There are people who are already investing in their marketing, and they're moving toward AI completely. Because that's a whole different aspect. But I agree with you, Shannon. You can't. But I think the important thing also is the education to everyone as we talk about it, to not be afraid to talk about it, because that helps people who are on the candidate side understand, I'm again old school. So I know I'm still going to pick up the phone. I'm going to email you. I'm going to find you on LinkedIn. I'm going to find you on Twitter. I'm a good stalker. I mean, that there's a follow-up procedure that goes with just like shooting your information out into the internet, into the tech world, and just wondering what's going to happen with it. And I think the more that's the challenge, is that the more AI is developed, people are afraid of well, let's just let the AI do it. And you can't just give full power to putting it out into the ether. You have to actually do some work still on your end. And it's hard enough to do that anyway as a recruiter, right? You're you people that don't even know how to write their MBA on their resume and go, we need to help you develop, because that's not their area of expertise. So
I wonder, just sidetracking slightly,
Absolutely.
I wonder, based on everyone's experiences here and all working for different organizations and having a different journey, certainly over the last few years, whether there's any organizations that are actually sort of trying to encourage their folks through team around the use of AI, because it feels to me like it's almost like independent adoption, which can be hit or miss. And people either have an interest or they don't have an interest, or they might have an interest to start and maybe it wanes for some reason. But it doesn't seem to me to be, from what I see, people team adoption in terms of, okay, so we think that this is a great idea. What do you guys all think? Let's have some training. Let's have some follow up and follow through on the thoughts and how well this actually is working from a process perspective. I don't know if anyone has had that internally in their own organisations in a thoughtful way, whether that's been seen at all. Has it?
That's a great question.
Sure, somebody's got it going.
Yeah, I would say that it's not an age specific thing that attracts people to AI. It's an individual quality that people have. Either they're attracted and interested in playing around with it, and they might not be. So I've seen as many of the youngest members of our team have really no interest. Meanwhile, I feel like I'm living in the middle of something incredible, and not saying that I'm all in, hook, line, and sinker, ready for an AI everything future, but I understand the magnitude of what's happening, and I feel like I'm obligated to be there and play with it.
You know, it's funny when it comes to, I think it's about what do we use it for? And I think there's a lot of people who want to try and replace the sort of like the calories, mental calories that are expended in parts of our job in actually making the decisions. And that's not really where AI is going to be. Like I've heard of people who take a resume and then a job description and they say, am I a good fit for this role? And then it's going to kind of do its analysis and spit out an answer. And it's like at the end of the day, I think we still need humans to make that to use your discernment. I think one of the things that I've used it for, and increasingly so, is things like research about subject matter where I'm not the expert, and I'd like to ramp up on that to be able to ask more thoughtful questions. Understand, even if it's like current events and such. Like the Google integration of Gemini into search is huge for that, because it is effectively got access to the internet, and so you can use that to substantiate your knowledge base and be present and show up in your face-to-face interactions with candidates in a far more meaningful way. And I think that's where it's sort of like it kind of, in my opinion anyway, where the runway to get into tech recruitment felt like an insurmountable task, because I didn't know anything. I was going to guess. Didn't know anything about tech, and it was terrifying. And this concept of trying to it was like the guppy trying to swallow the whale, right? Like I understood the basics of a computer, but we were talking about databases and layers and stacks, and that was just such a foreign concept. And there seems to be like a woefully like vacuum of good pictorial diagrams to explain all that to people about what is coding and how does that work. And so the advent of AI, I think, could really shorten that runway, because there is a certain aptitude you need to be able to play in specific areas, and you get really good at asking questions. And the chat GPTs or the GPTs out there are excellent for delivering succinct information without having to go read textbooks. So right. I think that's going to be huge in shortening the runway for people who might be interested in getting into recruitment on the subject matter. Because let's be real, and I say this every time I'm on these shows, the only people who want to talk about jobs are job seekers and recruiters. Right. Everybody else on earth wants to talk about subject matter. And if you can't hold your own in that sort of subject matter level conversation, right. you will continue to be a very transactional based recruiter. It's going to be about keyword matching, kind of those basics, checkbox, very one-dimensional process. The relating aspect that makes really good recruiters really good comes from being able to sort of go deep and build those connections and recognize where people have opinions. And they're calling them this like library of past conversations that we've had. And I think that the power of AI is in hand delivering that information in a much more succinct little package than having to do all that research and having right. to have those 1,000 conversations on your own. So yeah, I if you talk about who would recommend it, I think it's about what would you recommend using AI for in our space. And yeah, there's lots of automation steps and processes, but I got to be honest, I mess up every single time I try to create a workflow in my CRM and I send something out. And I'm like, well, that's not
Oh no.
to send, because I threw something in a bucket and it auto emailed somebody. I hate that. So there's a lot of things that I think I could get better at using, and having AI kind of finagle the way through that would be great. But I just don't think that the tools are there yet for that.
That's an interesting point, Shannon, because so at Greenlight, we've got, like I said before, we've got our robotics process automation consulting business.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got access to an internal bot ops team. So they create all this automation for us, which is phenomenal. And really our goal is to, we're not trying to replace recruiters. We're not trying to necessarily use it to zero in on candidates per se. I mean, ultimately, maybe we'll find a tool that does that. Mm-hmm. But what we're trying to do right now is remove as many barriers as possible so that our recruiters and our salespeople spend their time doing what they're most skilled at, right? Remove the admin burden, remove all of those aspects that are using skills that we don't need them to do that. We want them to use the expertise, the skills, the soft skills, all those things to the most that they can, right? And so I think that's been our approach to it. I know that I'm sitting in a very fortunate seat having that team available. And when something goes wrong, I ping them, they open a ticket and they fix it. But so far so good. I mean, the first time I clicked, a placement and I knew it was auto-generating a contract to a candidate, I was really nervous, but they'd been doing it for a while before I even got there. And so they had all their processes in place, but it's been absolutely amazing. I'm not tweaking contracts. I'm not reviewing things. It just goes and it works, which is lovely.
And if I was willing to expend those mental calories to figure out how to do all that in the system I have, because it's all baked in. I get halfway down that process, I'm like, this is frustrating.
But I think that's the challenge. Yeah, that's not really where your skill set is, right? Like that's not where your passion is. And so, like, I don't know, outsourcing that piece, obviously there's a cost to it, but maybe that's a better expenditure than spending time trying to figure out how AI can replace a recruiter, right? How do let's invest some money in removing some of that administrative burden so that we get our recruiters and our salespeople full force hitting the market, at full speed.
I love it. Also, I just want to point out that our Rick, Cristiano, and Ian, you guys hanging out together there, or in the cottage together? Is that?
I thought it was a real background.
Jealous of your music studio.
Only change my virtual background here. If I did this one, there you go.
Great.
I was like, they're pros.
I didn't even realize that. I'm not very. Yeah,
I noticed it because I was going to blur my background at first, and then I went like, I thought that was Ian's real background. I wanted to just
start at Ski Chalet and like Aspen together.
I can play a tune on the piano back there if you want. I'll just.
I wanted to add one other thing about the AI. I didn't know this was going to turn into like an AI, conversation mostly, but I think the other thing too is I'm hoping that in the future that companies will invest a little bit more in sales enablement, and having someone, because there's always somebody on the team who is a geek and loves technology, but also has the skills, like I'm raising my hand, that has the skills in the background that's been doing this for, I've been 20 plus. Thank you, Marsha, for being so forthcoming. I said 10 and 8 plus, but yeah, I've really been doing this for 20 plus years as well.
I know, right?
Yeah. And that's another thing, right? I'm like, ageism is like a thing that I'm like, I don't want people to, immediately box me out.
Right.
But, I think that sales enablement is something that really companies should invest in, because and the thing is, it's deceiving because you think it's going to take a lot of time, to teach something. You're like Shannon was saying, I'm like, I don't want to invest my time there because I have so many other things to do. And I think that's a lot of, where people are. And so companies are. And so it really isn't that hard. That's the thing. I just put together an outlook. My company is not, we're like old school, bench sign marketing. So we're not going to get into the AI aspect. I mean, I use it personally because I know how much time it saves. But also check your references is the other thing I wanted to add in there. So if you're using AI, I still don't trust it that much. So I will double check a reference, you know, and I'm like, wait a minute, let me see if this is accurate, because right now we live in a world of you say it and it's true, right? I mean, I turn on TikTok and I'm like, I hear all these people who want to be like, media experts. And I'm like, wait a minute, I came up from a media company, and the first thing we would always ask, and I was on the advertising side, I wasn't even on the editorial side, we would say, where did you get that? Where's the rep, who's your sources? You can't just trust something because somebody's telling you something.
And it's not healthy to drink cider vinegar every day.
Ooh.
Oh my gosh. So anyway,
yeah, it's kind of like there's a GPT for that, right? Like, or everything used to be there's an app for that, but now there's a GPT for that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. Oh my god.
One of the things that to hit on something that Shannon mentioned, I used GPT recently just by feeding it with a lot of background information. This is who I am. This is my company. This situation. Now, this is the current saber rattling when it comes to tariffs, et cetera, guide me step by step to open a business in the United States to, avoid tariffs. So it's something like that, where you're not having to do the research, not spending the time that it would take. And then, you're smart enough to come back and check the references and verify, does this look like good advice? When I go and see a lawyer about it, I'm not going to spend hours of discovery with the lawyer going over things that I've already got the answers to. And then one other thing that I was going to mention was what I found very liberating is, and again, I mentioned already that I do Zoho and that we're Zoho partners, but what attracted me to Zoho in the first place was the fact that I was able to outsource the idea of technology within our company. So I've grown up in large companies where I've seen little mini armies of people, dysfunctional, sometimes functional, spending millions of dollars to try to make software do basic things. And, and then you still need that person on the edge looking for what's coming next. Where are we going? And the reason I find Zoho liberating, and there's other tools that are similar because they're built on SaaS platforms. So, it's not owned exclusively to Zoho, but just businesses where they're constantly updating and reinvesting in the latest for their own software. So you don't have to worry about something that may have changed in the industry. And now, everybody's doing it this way. Well, they've already got it figured out. They've got a team working on it. So that's really how I kind of don't even bother thinking about what's happening there in tech so much. And I just allow the constant research and development for each of the software tools that I use to sort of keep me informed and inform my decisions, because I don't think we're at the luxury of being in a static environment anymore. I think we need to be capable of riding with the different trends and changing at the speed of light. So that's kind of one less thing that I feel like I need to worry about by just abdicating that responsibility.
That's awesome. I do want to, I'm wondering, because we have done, we've kind of beat the dead horse with AI. Rick, I'm just taking over hosting duties. I hope this is okay. There was a question that came up earlier in the comments, and it was really, well, you're just so late to the table every time, every time you start to speak.
I think I'm on a very big delay.
Technology.
A very big delay, so please go on. Please.
But this is a really important comment, and that is, we're talking about all the things that AI doesn't do. And so maybe we can shift back into the things that sort of recruiters do. And there was a great comment here. It says, curious, what candidate engagement strategies have you found to be most successful in your respective target markets? And I'll go first, because I really wanted to hit on that. And that is, once you have all of your sort of research and you've kind of identified sort of prospective candidates that you want to have a conversation with, I have found the like zero pressure, I'm not going to try and sell you a job approach. Just, hi, I'd like to start a relationship. And, you came up either in a search I'm doing for a client, but here's what stood out about your profile. Here's some of those parallels, because I have questions where even if you're not looking for a job, can we still connect so I can tap into your brilliance as a candidate? So like, I see you for who you are. So it is a slow as stink process, because you're looking at everybody you want to touch, and you have to be very, very brutal with your time, to to say, like, this is a person I want to engage in, what's going to be my entry point there. And you have to make it make sense, but you also can't write a paragraph, like it can't be like super long. So but I would say slow and highly personalized, and also removing that transactional component for me has been a big differentiator in the very saturated tech space, where there's so much noise. There's so many blasted job descriptions where it is kind of commoditized and reduced to these one-time transactions. Whereas I'm looking at candidates as that sort of 10-year relationship where I'm hoping, I can go grow with them in their career. So when we talk about ways that we get in candidates, for me, again, what are some of the ways in other markets? I know in different spaces that I've dabbled in before, that doesn't always work either. People do want to be more transactional because they're like consultants, as an example. Anybody find that? What are some of the tactics that you use to actually drive the engagement numbers of your candidate
Can
audience?
you repeat that question? I'm sorry, I missed the initial question. I looked in the chat, but I didn't see it. What was the initial question?
Oh, so this is in the comments, not in our private chat. So this one is, and it was curious about what engagement strategies have you found to be most successful in your respective target markets? For like, again, this is now taking things back to the human component, when it's not just spray and pray, or blast or whatever. When you actually want to engage a conversation with a specific target, how do you get them to pick up the phone with you?
I would find a way to provide value, be a domain authority figure in that space, put out content, and repeat. That's what I've noticed, and it works great. I don't even really have to do business development. It's just all word of mouth referrals. Hey, Dom's helped us out in the SaaS supply chain tech WMS company. Go to him for sales, professional services. But if you're just starting out, how would you do that? But somebody said earlier, like somebody was 100,000 emails. That's crazy. First off, that's not the way to do it. You want to do 100, maybe 100 at a time in each niche, beta test it. We track all the data, what messages we're sending, what works at C-suite versus director versus VP. I mean, we have different campaigns tracking even just the LinkedIn automation piece of it. Okay, what's working in that space? What's working in this area, C-suites? But going back to what you said earlier, Shannon, I am worried about recruiters. They're not going to replace us, right? The touch point, you always need a human touch point. But there's something that's coming out that's not out yet that I did a demo with a few weeks ago. It is scary. It looks like it's Shannon Roach on the screen. They're collecting 172 data points on you, scraping your socials and everything. When this comes out, it's not going to be let's say a boutique firm of 10. It may go down to, hey, just 3 killers that can get the job done.
Are you talking about like kind of like the deep fakes on those initial sort of like phone screens and interviews and stuff like that? Like,
no, so you could have it just a AI person bot, or you can have it as you, it's looking like you, talks like you, and it's so let's say, for example, you post a job, you get 143 resumes within an hour, right? Well, you're not going to go through all 143 of those. So everybody gets an interview. It goes on an AI bot interview, and it's collecting data points, it's scraping it, and then it's giving you the results based on that, what you're specifically looking for.
So here's what's really fascinating about that, because that is this, like, it's great that it can do that in principle. When you're close to the subject matter, you can poke the holes in it though, right? Like, so if you don't read resumes for a living and you ask AI to give you a resume with your stuff and it produces something and it's wordy and it sounds great and you would never write like that, oh my God, that's impressive. On the other side, where I'm looking at thousands of resumes a week, and I can spot those AI written resumes like a mile away.
Me too.
And so I think the same thing is that as a person, it's got so far to come. In principle, that sounds like, wow, that looks like a real person. And you can see the deep fake videos that we see on social media of, people putting words in Kamala's mouth or Trump's mouth or whatever that came out pre-election. And it's like, they didn't actually say that. That's not the actual clip. That's a doctored clip. That's really fascinating.
Right.
So I agree
No,
that
they're telling you actually that it's a bot. They're
yeah,
saying, hey, this is the bot that's doing the interviews, the initial
right.
interview.
And so,
And
but even then, I guess the thing that I'm saying is that it's very similar to what Ardit had brought up earlier, was that, sometimes there's like a limit to candidate controlled data. If they didn't think to put that particular keyword in there, the AI misses them because it doesn't infer that particular skill or that thing from the sort of information that the candidate gatekeeps and produces for us. And then the same
so
thing happens in that interview face to face, though. If the bot doesn't infer,
But Shannon, if you think about it, like screener questions that you put on a
yeah,
job applicant, those can narrow down a field of 100
yeah.
down to
Right.
20 candidates just by having the right questions. So it would be better if there was a bot doing it. Dominic
So
has got a pretty
what
good
Rob
point.
just said is exactly, so you can put whatever questions you want, right? And then so you said soft skills earlier. Well, it's checking for those, right? How they show up to the interview, how are they sitting, how are they standing, are they doing eye contact in the screen, right? So then it's checking off points, and I don't know how it's collected and all, but
Totally.
I'll tell you
And
this,
I'm
it is
and I'm
scary.
not saying this. I'm like, because there's all these factors that we read, but we're intuitive beings, and that's the problem. We're trying to take the things like you could go and there's no better example of this from dating apps, which is hilarious that I'm talking about dating apps because I've been with my husband for like 21 years, pre the online dating scene, so I don't know anything about these things. But when you talk about people who look great on paper, we should be a good match. The exchange of sort of ideas, the conversation, there was nothing actually wrong that happened there, but I can't put my finger on it. There's just no attraction. There's there's none of that because we're intuitive. And if you had to completely deconstruct it so that you could feed that information to a machine, and then the other thing is preference. So that's the problem. Like one interviewer could love one guy and not love that girl, or vice versa. And so it's until we have that highly personalized, AI assistant who's doing our interviews for us that knows that over time, I tend to like people who, I don't know, their pupils dilate when I talk about this. Those are all those instinctive things that happen behind the scenes. And this is all I'm saying. I don't doubt that eventually we can be completely undressed and dissected for technology. I think what I'm saying is that as terrifying as that is, it's easy to have that knee-jerk reaction that says, oh my gosh, it can read screen like eye tracking, eyeball tracking movements, and then freak out about it. And it's sort of like, but at the end of the day, we have to render the decision on whether or not we like somebody based on our personal preferences, and it's not going to automate those.
But I think
you're still interviewing them. It's just after the fact that's slowing it down for you, getting the right group in front of you.
I think the thing though is that we also not only, we're talking because somebody said earlier, I think maybe Rob or Dominic, we're talking about large scale organizations who are, so the boutique service isn't going to necessarily utilize the AI aspect, but to a corporation, a multi-million, billion corporation, when they're looking at investing in the technology, they're saying they can invest in the technology rather than a person that they have to hire, they have to onboard, then they have to worry about workman's comp or any other, unemployment. So in their mind, the justification of investing in AI it's kind of a no-brainer, right, to higher ups in those. So I see when Dominic, when you're talking about that, it's like what I'm hearing is iRobot is inevitable. We're gonna eventually it's gonna be but I think that's the thing to think about is like it's hard though, because you not only you have to sell up to your to the CEO that what we're talking about here is important, not just outwardly outside of your corporation, but inside also, if you belong to a large organization, because it is happening. I've read about that technology as well.
Yeah. Well, here,
I think
so
we could
both
see some
both are going to
changes
use it.
in the employment legislation as well. I like honestly, if this starts becoming a thing and people feel like they've been unfairly disqualified because they didn't do the right thing for like they didn't do that
Oh, yeah.
performant, especially people who have like disabilities like autism, where
Right.
certain things like social cues might deviate from what we consider norms. That's an embedded sort of discrimination within some of the tech, which has been trained to say, hey, people are likable when they do that, when they make eye contact. And you know,
Yeah.
an autistic person may be more or less likely to do that, make eye contact and hold it for too long. It's that sort of natural element of it.
Right.
And I think that you would see like my hope is that we would have sort of those protective for people who are vulnerable, come into the employment legislation, but where we can use tech to automate versus where or if you have to tell people, I like this, like you have to tell them, okay, so you're going to go interview with a machine, but then what is the roundabout way? What is the accommodation you could make? And could somebody request an actual interaction with a person outside of, the machine and the process? Because, I am not going to be sort of welcomed by the embedded discrimination and biases within those tools. I want to bring it back to comparing two movies. It sounds so stupid, but like the movie Runaway Jury and then the movie The Devil's Advocate, right? So Runaway Jury is where they've got these like jury consultants and they come in and they use tech and they are recording them all. They follow them around. They're getting as many data points as possible to decide how to select a jury that's going to go in your behavior. And the guy was still able to fool it. So the John Cusack character was able to say and get on a jury, and he's been trying to get on a jury because he wants to, be part of the process to render decisions on gun crime. And then on the other side is the Devil's Advocate, where you've got the Keanu Reeves, who's like this hotshot young lawyer, and he gets lucky with jury selection, and that's how he claims to be able to kind of fix juries, is that he's very, very good, and he just has these instincts. Well, as it turns out, he's the devil's son, and that's why he has all these instincts and insights on people, and things like that. But it's that intuitive component that he says, I've just had some really lucky juries in that thing about predicting people's behaviors, and things like that. And I guess what it comes down to is that there's not going to be one catch-all, and I don't see, for the cost of training, and using your own data sets, your own hiring managers, all of that stuff, I don't see that value proposition ever really making sense, especially because in the tech sphere where I play a lot, the subject matter conversations we're talking about right now is the cost of AI is going to follow a very similar S-curve as the cloud cost. It seems like, oh, you only use what you consume, and that sounds great, except that you're paying by token. And so if you're going to tap into any of these large language models and not build your own LLM, which by the way is very, very, very costly, the tokenization cost to be able to run one interview and get those one data points would be exorbitant. And you kind of go, it's actually cheaper to go hire the recruiter who's halfway decent at their job.
There's also a differentiation though too. We're talking a lot about reactive recruiting versus proactive recruiting. And so people applicants coming into the system, right? So I think part of that question was around engaging, like how do we go out to the candidates? And I guess just to add maybe a bit of color on that, my philosophy has always been if I'm proactively recruiting on something, I'm not necessarily trying to fill the role that is in front of me right now. I'm trying to build a relationship where maybe it's this role, maybe it's a future role. And I think that candidates can pick up on that when you're trying to push them into something that suits your needs versus their needs. It's about really finding that alignment, that matchmaking piece of it. And so I would suggest if you're new to the industry or if you've been around and you're just not having success, maybe try that approach as far as how you're going to the market to say, am I just trying to fill a position that's in front of me right now, or am I building relationships that, the next time that role comes in? And I even the same for when we post roles. I always tell the recruitment team, we're not posting to fill this role. We're posting for future roles. We probably are the candidates that's going to fill this role. And so I think having that mindset and how you write your email, how you leave a voicemail, how you handle a phone call, that's how you're going to differentiate yourself. I once had somebody call me back after I left a voicemail, and I was surprised that they called me back. And she said, there's something different about your voicemail. Like there's something in this that made me want to call you back. And I was like, that is the nicest compliment I've ever gotten in my life.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just thought I would put that on the lid because we talked a lot about data and AI I don't think AI is necessarily, like, maybe it will go out and find people that will get recruiters to go out and target, but they're still going to have that conversation that is personable and where it's a relationship that's built over time.
And that's where the sales enablement stuff for me, when I mentioned earlier, comes in, because you get to actually train people on how to speak to people, or how to, about the service or product that you're offering to, the public. I wanted to just say my answer to the question is, I've said this for the last 20 years, networking. There's nothing that substitutes networking. I send everybody here a LinkedIn request already. It's like, so you'll have it in your inbox. But there is nothing like expanding that. I mean, I've known, I just met Rick, but I knew Julie before. And the first thing that I did when I started looking for a job was pick up the phone to talk to everybody I knew, everybody that was on my LinkedIn, everybody that was, and I got so many responses, immediate responses back from, and that says a lot, right? If you get an immediate response from somebody. But whether you're out in public, it's the soft skills are learning how to talk to people. Look, if I could live with just my animals, I would be happy. I mean, but so unfortunately, I've picked careers where I'm around people all the time, and I have to be in front of them. And so where it's human nature, we have to interact. So I think use your network. I would always tell people, if I was in an interview, I'm like, who do you know? Who did you work with? All your references. Speak to those people and keep those relationships going, because you never know. And that's that every job that I've, except for the one I have now, every job that I've ever gotten in the past has been from picking up the phone and calling a former manager or a former colleague. And so I think that's the important thing in recruiting and staffing, is learn how to, because we didn't even talk about LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is an important, aspect of recruiting today. And so anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of that, Hector, because I went on a full-on rampage into LinkedIn in 2024 because, to be fair, I've never used it properly because I didn't have to. I've been in an industry that's been robust. I do my cold call outreach. I get my deals. I just didn't really need to network as much as I should have been networking. Right. So in January, I hired a consultant I'm like, here's what I need, just do the things. Cause like I love Shannon's, the mental calorie thing. I just didn't have any to give. Right? And so it's been a really beautiful process. I didn't get as big of a return as I really wanted on it. But what I did get, guys, is I'm averaging something like 780 impressions a week now, where I was averaging 2 or something before. So now we're talking over, let's extrapolate that to 52 weeks, 40,000. You can't, that's free advertising for the people that are in my space. And now there's this ubiquity about my presence and my persona. And I've literally had people now starting to reach out to me and say, Marcia, your content has become, you're becoming one of the people I look for their content each week.
Yes.
And what I have done to make it personal is I'm a big time traveler. I've just started traveling about the last 4 or 5 years. I'm going to some really cool places. So now I'm taking my experiences and using that, and I'm using ChatGPT. Okay, ChatGPT, write me a post about making pasta and staffing.
I love it.
And it gives me this beautiful content, and I tweak it up a little bit and I make it more. But now it's a real experience that I've had. It's not a fake experience. It's a real experience that I had, but maybe I just didn't have the bandwidth or interest or, mental calories that week to construct that post. But now I'm going back and I'm looking at my beautiful experiences. I'm saying, I'm standing in the Coliseum. Did they have physical therapists after their bout with the lion? I don't think so. But I have physical therapists today. So,
I love it. That's awesome.
I'm able to take something that's my real personality and mash it up with my occupation.
Right.
People are saying that's interesting. So I think that's to kind of go back to Rick's question, like LinkedIn Recruiter. I use LinkedIn Sales Navigator primarily because I'm client facing, but I don't think it's outdated. I don't think it's had its moment. I did a little bit of research for this talk. LinkedIn's user base is expected to increase 22.3% between 2024 and 2028.
Right. Yeah.
Guys, you get a better return. If you just comment on people's posts that you want to talk to, they will read your comment. Guess what they will do? They will go to your page. They will check you out. And then I'm like, hey, thanks for stopping by my page.
Right.
How can I be of service? And all of a sudden it's a different connection because you are engaging with them, and attention is the number one thing we're all trying to get, right?
Exactly.
We're trying to get a client's attention. We're trying to get a candidate's attention. So if you're stalking a candidate, engage on their post, because they are going to be thankful that you are reading what they wrote. Pick something interesting that they said and then add on to that, and they're going to be like, oh my God, this person gets me. That's the soft skill that you can't figure out from an AI chatbot.
Right, exactly. And pro tip on that, Marsha, you're probably already doing this, but every time you post something, an article, you know, at the company, at Forbes, at whoever the writer is, because I've had writers now following me because I post their information on LinkedIn. So, you know, one of my posts had 30,000 impressions for one post. So, I mean, LinkedIn is so, and you know, that, you know, maybe that's part 2 for next week, or Rick, or something, to talk more about LinkedIn. But
I think an entire conversation on LinkedIn is warranted. And if people are not using it from here going forward, they're crazy.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. My other thing is that is also Google is like, I would tell people, I'm like, if you think people aren't Googling your name, make sure you check your Google and see what's coming up for you in the algorithm. Cause you know, it's just, that's the age we're in, right? You know, it's like, we can do all of that stuff through the internet and technology.
Did you just call it the Google, Hector? The Google?
The Google, yeah. The Google.
The Google.
Guys, I'm going to interrupt because we're over time, and Rick has sent a message saying that he's effectively sort of frozen and can't really say much. So I'm going to say, I'm going to take the floor and just say thank you to everybody. And hopefully next week, I think we allowed maximum 10 people. So we actually have had people waiting to get in for this. And so this is the drop-in is obviously popular, which is great. Thing is, you dropped in and stayed. I don't know that was the idea, but you know, hey, perfect. So thank you, and hopefully next week we'll have a different conversation. Maybe LinkedIn is one of the topics, but we'll carry on next week, and have a good rest of the day. Thanks for coming.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Ciao.